Welcome to VSOW. Today we're embarking on a deep dive into the extraordinary life of a man who didn't just break barriers. He absolutely shattered them. And not just with conviction, but with the incisive power of laughter. Okay, well, let's really unpack this story for a minute. Imagine someone so profoundly funny that they're the first to integrate these exclusive all-white comedy clubs, fundamentally changing the landscape of entertainment. But then this same individual is so fiercely committed to justice that they personally charter a plane, right? To deliver 14,000 pounds of food to starving civil rights activists in the heart of Mississippi. And get this, immediately after this act of, profound humanitarian aid, they're back on stage, brilliantly making fun of the very police chief who had just tried to bomb a mass meeting. This isn't just the story of a comedian, this is the story of Dick Gregory, a true pioneer who understood how to weaponize laughter in the fight for human rights, transforming humor into this undeniable force for social change.
It's truly fascinating, and that's really what we'll be exploring today. How Dick Gregory didn't just add humor to his activism. He seamlessly integrated his unique comic sensibility into every fiber of his advocacy. He wasn't merely an entertainer who also happened to be an activist, right? It was more like his comedic style became a core, inseparable component of his activist approach. We'll delve into how this allowed him to humanize incredibly complex and often painful issues, how he creatively challenged the most entrenched aspects of the status quo, and perhaps most importantly, how he managed to foster this unwavering sense of hope, in the face of daunting, often brutal injustice. Our insights today will be drawn directly from his own powerful autobiography, his iconic speeches, and critical academic analyses of his profound body of work. Our mission is to truly understand how Dick Gregory transformed his comedic genius into such a powerful, enduring force for social change, making him one of the most influential and unforgettable figures of his time. And what profound lessons his remarkably unique approach holds for us even now.
Dick Gregory's journey, this incredible story we're about to explore, it began far from the bright lights of comedy clubs and the tense, dangerous stages and protest rallies. He was born in 1932 into what he would describe as just grinding poverty in St. Louis, Missouri. His father deserted the family when Dick was very young, leaving his mother to somehow raise 5 siblings entirely on her own. It was an incredibly challenging start, almost unimaginable for most of us today, but it was also precisely in these dire circumstances that his foundational lessons in resilience and the sheer transformative power of humor truly took root.
You're absolutely right. Despite the crushing weight of poverty, his mother instilled in him some truly crucial distinctions and a profound, almost radical sense of hope that would define his life. She famously told him, and he would often repeat it, "We ain't poor, we're just broke." Now, that might sound like a simple turn of phrase, but it's a crucial distinction. It separated a temporary financial state from a permanent state of mind. For her, poverty was a state of being, a mindset that could trap you, whereas being broke was, just a temporary condition, something you could work your way out of, a challenge to be overcome. She actively found hope and solace in laughter, teaching her children to smile and laugh when the house was dark and cold, linking humor directly to resilience in the face of unimaginable hardship. Gregory himself, when reflecting on his adult life, particularly his ability to handle intense fear, in the face of danger during protests, he attributed that remarkable composure directly to her early influence. This early conditioning, learning to find humor and hope even in adversity, truly laid the indispensable groundwork for his later profoundly effective activist style.
It's remarkable how that innate resilience, born of his challenging upbringing, first manifested itself so powerfully in his early life through his athletic prowess. Dick Gregory wasn't just good at sports. He was formidable, a record-breaking athlete, a true standout, which earned him a track scholarship to Southern Illinois University. He wasn't simply participating, he was exceptional, becoming the first Black person in U.S. history to win a long-distance state cross-country championship, specifically the Missouri State Mile Championship, and also a cross-country championship. That's a significant achievement for anyone, let alone someone facing the racial barriers of the time.
And that's precisely where his early athletic triumphs intersect with the systemic racial issues he would dedicate his life to fighting.
Yeah.
He actually ran one of the fastest high school mile times ever recorded in America during that period.
Wow.
But because it was at a segregated all-Negro meet, he didn't receive official credit for the state record.
Unbelievable.
This wasn't just a personal slight. It was a glaring example of institutionalized racism, and it served as a powerful early catalyst for his activism. In response to this and other injustices, he began leading NAACP demonstrations against overcrowded conditions in the local school system. which, remarkably, ultimately resulted in the integration of cross-country at SIU. His commitment to social justice, you see, began long before he became a household name for his comedy.
Right, right.
Then when he was drafted into the Army in 1954, discharged in 56, he continued to excel athletically, becoming the third fastest half-miler in the entire nation. This athletic achievement, in his own words, actually gave him a certain latitude, a kind of unspoken permission to be funny within the military structure.
Ah,
It was in military talent shows that he truly started doing comedy, discovering his unique comedic voice, and honing his craft in an environment where, as he put it, he could get away with a lot of stuff. It
yeah.
was a critical proving ground for his future career.
So he's already using humor as a tool for survival, for expression, and for, subtly pushing boundaries, even within the confines of military life. This foundational experience brings us directly to his breakthrough moment in the notoriously tough American comedy scene. For black comedians at the time, there was the entrenched Chitlin circuit, where they typically performed only for black audiences. To even consider playing to white audiences, they were often expected to retain deeply demeaning minstrel characteristics, to essentially perform a caricature of blackness that appealed to white prejudices.
Yeah, the sources highlight this oppressive standard by mentioning Timmy Rogers, whose contract was actually terminated when he dared to shift to a more intellectual, less stereotypical persona. That context is crucial for understanding what Gregory was up against. It's an absolutely critical point for understanding the incredibly restrictive and frankly demeaning landscape Gregory entered. It highlights the oppressive constraints on black entertainers at the time. To even dream of breaking into the mainstream, they were often explicitly or implicitly expected to embody harmful stereotypes rather than challenge them with their wit. This makes Gregory's entry into white nightclubs, particularly his now legendary engagement at the Playboy Club in January 1961, all the more profoundly significant and daring.
Right.
He was struggling, living a hand-to-mouth existence in Chicago, when he received that unexpected call to fill in for an ailing performer at the last minute.
And it almost didn't happen. The management at the Playboy Club actually tried to turn him away when he arrived because a large group of Southern executives had booked the club for the night.
Yeah.
Imagine that scene. A black comedian, already known for his sharp, racially barbed satire, about to perform for an all-white, predominantly Southern audience in the deeply segregated year of 1961. It must have felt like walking into a lion's den.
Yep.
But Gregory, with his characteristic defiance and self-possession, insisted on performing. And the sources vividly tell us that he didn't just perform, he won the crowd over, completely captivated them, leading to an unprecedented long-term engagement that truly launched him into the national spotlight. This was a pivotal, seismic moment. He became the first African-American stand-up comedian to regularly play to white audiences with material that was, by design, satirical, racially charged, and uncompromising. He didn't dilute his message for comfort. He amplified it for impact.
It was, without exaggeration, a groundbreaking achievement that led to immediate and widespread national acclaim. He quickly became the first black guest invited on Jack Pair's Tonight Show,
Huge platform.
which at the time was an unparalleled platform for national visibility. Time magazine, in February 1961, recognized his unique genius, noting his intelligence, sophistication, and none of the black voice buffoonery of Amos and Andy, explicitly establishing him as the first Negro comedian to make his way into the nightclub big time. The New York Times echoed this praise, celebrating his remarkable ability to hold his own in the ranks of the bright young, intellectually oriented, wittily topical stand-up comics. This wasn't merely about entertainment, it was about integrating previously segregated spaces and fundamentally challenging deeply ingrained perceptions about race and humor.
Yeah.
His success didn't just benefit him, it literally paved the way for future generations of black comedians, a veritable lineage of brilliance including Godfrey Cambridge, Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, Chris Rock, and Dave Chappelle, who years later would himself reverently refer to Gregory as a king and a giant of comedy. He truly changed the game.
Now, this next phase of his life truly sets him apart, revealing the profound depth of his commitment. Dick Gregory didn't just tell jokes, he lived his jokes. His comedy wasn't merely entertainment, it became a profound, indispensable part of his activism. But how does humor, a medium often seen as lighthearted, as a way to escape reality, become a necessary component of something as serious, as weighty, as human rights advocacy? What's the connection there?
That's a fantastic question, and it's where the academic analyses of Gregory's work become so insightful. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Gregory's entire career offers a compelling living case study for what is termed an activist style, a mode of engagement where humor is not just integral, but foundational. It moves far beyond simply providing comic relief. Instead, it actively shapes the very way advocacy is performed, understood, and received. It's about a comic sensibility being infused into the very fabric of the fight for justice. Jonathan Rossing, a scholar who has extensively studied Gregory, argues that humor, at its most effective, awakens communities by providing new perspectives on reality and sharpening understandings of injustice.
Okay.
It provokes dialogue and action and humanizes all parties in a struggle. This core understanding is absolutely key to grasping Gregory's unique and lasting impact.
So when we talk about this comic sensibility as a core part of his activism, where do we begin to unpack that? What was the first foundational way he leveraged humor, not just for laughs, but for genuine connection and change?
One of the most powerful ways was through what scholars call humanizing identification, which you could also think of as comedy as friendly relations.
Yeah.
The fundamental goal of activism is to end dehumanizing practices and to gain full recognition for the inherent dignity and rights of all people. Humor, through what a philosopher named Kenneth Burke called a comic frame, helps achieve this.
A comic frame, okay.
Essentially, it's about seeing others, even those we might profoundly disagree with, as social animals inescapably susceptible to folly and fallacy, meaning we're all flawed human beings prone to mistakes, just like us.
Right.
This perspective encourages a charitable attitude, fostering self-reflection rather than descending into cynicism or hostility. It avoids vilification or hero worship, instead promoting a realistic sense of human limitations. Gregory absolutely embodied this approach.
And his practical application of this was truly brilliant. He mastered humility and, crucially, self-deprecating humor. He learned early on, and it became a guiding principle, that once you get a man to laugh with you, it's hard for him to laugh at you. That's powerful. He would often make jokes about himself or shared human foibles before making jokes about others or society. This was a profoundly powerful way to disarm potential hostility, especially in those early, predominantly white clubs where audiences might have come in with preconceived biases.
A perfect, indelible example of this mastery is how he handled hecklers, particularly those who hurled direct racial slurs. You know, it's wild to think about how he'd anticipate racist hecklers, right?
Yeah, you mentioned that.
He'd even practice retorts with his wife Eunice at the dinner table. Can you imagine that family dinner conversation, honing these witty comebacks?
No, I really can't.
So when he'd be on stage and some white audience member would inevitably yell nigger, he would coolly, calmly retort, "You hear what that guy just called me? Roy Rogers' horse? He called me Trigger." By feigning a misunderstanding, by essentially playing the fool, he completely disarmed the aggression. He took the power out of the hateful word and, crucially, prevented the audience from feeling pity or anger for him, instead inviting them into a shared moment of incredulous humor.
That report, he called me Trigger. It's truly brilliant. What made that particular approach so incredibly effective in disarming hostility, especially in those tense early performances where he was breaking so much ground. And he had another one that's equally famous, right? Where he'd respond to the slur by saying, "My contract reads that every time I hear that word, I get $50 more a night.
Yes.
I'm only making $10 a night, and I'd like to put the owner out of business. Will everyone in the room please stand up and yell nigger?"
Incredible nerve. What's so effective about both of those responses is Gregory's incredible control. In the trigger joke, he redirects the aggression into absurdity, making the heckler look ridiculous without directly attacking them. It's a deflection that asserts his dignity. In the $50 joke, he frames himself as profiting from the insult, effectively denying the heckler any power over him. He's turning the tables, transforming a hateful act into a potential financial gain, and again, controlling the audience's reaction, turning potential discomfort or tension into a shared, albeit dark, laugh at the absurdity of the situation. These responses consistently maintained his confidence and humility, prevented the audience from pitying him or becoming angry on his behalf, and most importantly, created opportunities for unexpected connection. Critics of his time consistently noted his remarkable ability to examine the foibles of both the black and white races without a trace of rancor or pretension and without any stooping or loss of dignity.
Yeah.
His humor wasn't about division. It actively cultivated a brotherhood of humor, demonstrating that there is no problem so serious that it cannot be leavened with humor. It was a profound act of humanization through laughter.
Once he had that connection, that ability to humanize through shared laughter, did his humor just keep things light, or did it also have a sharper edge? A way to truly challenge the status quo and push for deeper understanding. What's the next layer of this activist style?
That leads us directly to the second attribute, creative intervention. Humor isn't just about building friendly relations, it's about shaking things up, pushing boundaries, and making people see the world differently. Humor's inventive spirit allows for defining new values, for bravely confronting uncomfortable realities, and for creating what's been called a disruptive cacophony of voices that directly challenges the status quo and helps audiences imagine entirely new, more just realities. It functions as a comic counterpressure against rigidity, against outdated norms, and against systemic injustice. This approach is deeply connected to a rich vein within the African American rhetorical tradition, particularly the idea of signifying and trickster figures.
Ah, signifying. Right.
Think of it as a clever, often indirect, and highly witty way of critiquing power, using ambiguity and disruption to challenge norms, to outsmart those in authority, and to open up new perspectives that might otherwise be shut down. Gregory's masterful use of language in his routines perfectly exemplified this.
And his routines are legendary for exactly that kind of sophisticated, layered wit. He used playful attacks, often laced with deep emotional appeals, and agile maneuvering around deeply ingrained cultural taboos, constantly employing doubled meanings and cleverly shifting attention. Take his truly iconic restaurant story, for instance. He'd set it up by saying, "I went into a restaurant and the waiter told me, 'We don't serve coloreds here.'" And Gregory's brilliant, subversive reply, "That's fine, because I don't eat them. I'll have the fried chicken."
The genius, the sheer brilliance here, is in the setup. It initially misdirects the audience, leading them to anticipate the common, painful meaning of serve in the context of segregation, that is, providing services to black people.
Right, the expected meaning.
But the punchline, with its unexpected literal interpretation, forces an immediate and jarring cognitive shift to another meaning of serve, to offer as food. This twist instantaneously pushes the entire scenario into absurdity. It doesn't just get a laugh, it destabilizes the original oppressive meaning of segregation, making it appear utterly ludicrous, nonsensical, and indefensible. He subtly but powerfully rebuts the practice by turning the tables, using the oppressor's language against them, exposing the underlying bigotry as illogical and ridiculous. It's a brilliant example of creative intervention.
Or his equally insightful joke about the North versus the South, which many people at the time might have assumed were vastly different in their racial attitudes.
Yes, the chiasmus joke.
There's no difference between the North and the South. In the South, they don't care how close I get, so long as I don't get too big, and in the North, they don't care how big I get, as long as I don't get too close.
This specific joke, using that rhetorical device, chiasmus, a kind of inverted parallelism, is incredibly potent. It highlights the deeply uncomfortable truth of the commonality of racism across both regions, deftly refuting audience expectations that the North was inherently more progressive or free of prejudice. By demonstrating that different forms of racism still lead to the same fundamental exclusion, regardless of geography, he invited a broader, more nuanced, and often uncomfortable understanding of the problem. It subtly yet powerfully compelled the audience to see their own potential implication in systemic racism, regardless of where they lived.
Yeah, no escape.
His humor wasn't just about entertainment. It animated serious, critical consideration of racial injustice, bringing vital attention to overlooked experiences and perspectives and inviting audiences to see themselves differently within the broader problem of American society.
And the third attribute, hope and optimism, feels particularly crucial for activism, especially when confronting grim realities, violence, and deeply entrenched systemic injustice. How does humor sustain that essential ingredient?
It is absolutely essential because humor cultivates and sustains hope even amidst the most grim and disheartening circumstances. It acts as a vital counterbalance to the pain, frustration, and often justified rage that often drive social change. Without hope, the struggle can become overwhelming, debilitating, and, as some scholars put it, even suicidal. It's essential for imagining a better future, for sustaining the fight when progress seems impossible. And once again, Gregory's mother provided this enduring fundamental lesson. Her consistent smile, her unwavering spirit despite their poverty, and her belief that poor is a state of mind you never grow out of, but being broke is just a temporary condition. These were not just platitudes.
Yeah.
She truly taught him that everyone has two ways out in life, laughing or crying. There's more hope in laughing. This foundational belief was deeply ingrained in Gregory's being.
He truly internalized that lesson, and it infused his material, giving even his sharpest critiques an underlying current of resilience and possibility. He famously said, "You gotta learn how to make the bad things pleasant, because I believe one day this will all be over." That's not just a statement of optimism, it's a declaration of profound, almost radical faith in the future, a future where justice prevails.
And this radical optimism was so deeply woven into his comedic fabric that it even appeared in his most cutting jokes. Consider, for instance, his well-known NAACP membership joke.
Oh, yeah, the lifetime membership one.
Exactly.
Hmm.
They asked me to buy a lifetime membership in the NAACP, but I told them I'd pay a week at a time. Hell of a thing to buy a lifetime membership, wake up one morning, and find the country's been integrated.
Ah,
This joke, on its surface, is witty, but beneath that, it's profoundly future-focused. It expresses an almost audacious optimism that integration will happen, that it's not a distant dream, but an achievable reality, making a lifetime membership seem unnecessary in the long run because the very need for the organization will one day disappear. Gregory's entire attitude, his comedic posture, embodied an assertive and openly critical humor that somehow nimbly moves on to a vision of a brighter future or insistently counters the disparaging picture at hand with a more positive, forward-looking frame. This infusion of hope, this unwavering belief in the possibility of change, was a key defining characteristic of his activist style, inspiring not just laughter, but profound resilience in countless others.
so it's this masterful, multi-layered blend of humor, this humanizing connection, this creative intervention, and this relentless optimism that allowed Gregory to make an almost unbelievable transition from the comfortable, albeit often challenging, world of the comedy stage to the dangerous, often violent front lines of direct action. He famously began turning down lucrative comedy club offers shortly after gaining celebrity, explicitly stating in his memoir that he saw comedy clubs as an escape from the action, and he felt an undeniable, urgent compulsion to be on the front lines. He wrote, "I really hadn't planned to lead the marching in Greenwood, but looking at those beautiful faces ready to die for freedom, I knew I couldn't do less." His sense of moral imperative superseded personal gain.
His early and deep involvement with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, is a powerful and very early illustration of this profound shift in priorities. In the brutal winter of 1963, a truly dire humanitarian crisis unfolded in Mississippi. White authorities deliberately cut off federal commodities, which was surplus government food in LaFleur and Sunflower counties.
Oh, wow.
This was precisely where SNCC had major voter registration efforts underway. And this food was absolutely vital for the survival of sharecroppers who had no other means of sustenance through the harsh winter months. It was a deliberate act of economic warfare designed to break the will of the activists and their supporters.
And Gregory's response was both immediate and incredibly impactful, showcasing his characteristic blend of practicality and audacity. When SNCC put out a national call for aid, Gregory didn't just donate, he took direct action. He personally chartered a plane and sent an astonishing 14,000 pounds of food to Greenwood.
14,000 pounds.
This wasn't merely a charitable donation, it was a strategic direct intervention. As SNCC leader Bob Moses astutely noted, this relief effort enabled many in the community for the first time to see the clear, undeniable connection between political participation and food on their table.
Right.
SNCC staff meticulously distributed the food alongside voter registration forms, directly linking vital relief to political empowerment, transforming a humanitarian crisis into an organizing opportunity.
Following this heroic act of solidarity, SNCC organizers recognized Gregory's unique power and invited him to speak at a mass meeting in Greenwood. The community had never heard a black man speak publicly in such an unvarnished, defiant, and yet humorous manner. He courageously made fun of the local police, publicly calling them a bunch of illiterate whites who couldn't even pass the test themselves. A truly audacious statement in a place where such words could lead to severe retribution.
Unbelievable courage.
He even, with his typical fearlessness, criticized local preachers who were reluctant to actively join the movement, declaring, "These handkerchief heads don't realize this area is going to break. If you have to pray in the street, it's better than worshiping with a man who is less than a man."
Oof.
The effect was electric. The meeting erupted not just in applause, but in cathartic laughter, a release of tension and a surge of inspiration. And the impact was tangible. Just a week later, 31 ministers in the area, previously hesitant, signed a public statement supporting the voting rights drive. This incident perfectly demonstrates the power of his humor, not just to entertain, but to galvanize, to shame the complacent, and to embolden the fearful.
He also demonstrated an almost unbelievable coolness and presence of mind in the face of direct, life-threatening danger. In Clarksdale, Mississippi, during another mass meeting, A real live bomb was tossed through a window, striking a gas heater.
A bomb.
Panic immediately erupted and people started rushing for the door. But Gregory, with incredible composure, grabbed the microphone and instead of running, shouted, "Where are you going? The man who threw it is outside God's house. The man who's supposed to save you lives here."
Wow. Just incredible presence.
In that moment of absolute chaos, someone else, inspired by his calmness, miraculously threw the bomb back outside where it safely detonated. And in an act of sheer defiance and determination, the meeting just continued.
They just kept going.
They kept going. The local police chief, predictably, later denied his officers were responsible, adding in a chilling boast, "If one of our men threw that bomb, you'd better believe it would have gone off."
Chilling. It speaks volumes about the pervasive atmosphere of terror in the Jim Crow South and Gregory's extraordinary ability to diffuse it with wit and inspire others to courage.
And his interactions with the local police in Greenwood, in particular, became the stuff of legend. These were not theoretical encounters. They were direct physical confrontations with armed, hostile authorities. When a police officer physically dragged him across the street, Gregory didn't react with anger or fear. Instead, he calmly and sarcastically told the officer, "Thanks a million, up north police, don't escort me across the street."
He used humor to subtly ridicule the officer's behavior, turning an act of aggression into a bizarre courtesy.
Exactly. On another occasion, in a moment of extraordinary defiance, he wagged his finger directly in the faces of white policemen, confronting their use of the racial slur. He actually repeated the word back to them. "Who you callin' nigger? You ain't nothing but niggers yourselves. Nigger, 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 nigger."
That took guts. A profound act of reappropriation and depowering the word, taking its sting away by using it with ironic intent. He consistently, relentlessly used humor and defiant wit to assert his own dignity, to expose the absurdity and hypocrisy of the racist system, and to challenge authority directly, forcing a moment of cognitive dissonance in his oppressors.
That fearless engagement continued, escalating to some of the most iconic moments of the civil rights movement, particularly when he flew to Birmingham, Alabama during the Children's March in May 1963. This was the infamous period when thousands of black children and teenagers, some as young as 6, were arrested for peacefully protesting segregation, and Police Chief Bull Connor infamously ordered the use of high-pressure fire hoses.
The hoses, the dogs, horrific scenes.
That could rip the bark off trees and snarling police dogs against them. Gregory didn't hesitate. He plunged directly into the heart of the conflict. He personally led the first group of children marching to get arrested, demonstrating his solidarity and commitment. He was subsequently jailed for 4 days.
His commitment during this period went far beyond mere direct action on the streets. While incarcerated, he continued his protest, refusing to eat. Upon his release, he gave confidential advice to Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy about the escalating situation in Birmingham.
RFK, wow.
Which directly led to a secret, high-level New York meeting with prominent African-American leaders and artists, organized by the brilliant James Baldwin, to discuss comprehensive strategies for the burgeoning movement. And then, after his release from jail on May 20, 1963, he gave a truly famous, defining speech at St. John's Baptist Church in Birmingham. This speech was a masterclass in his unique activist style, perfectly blending his razor-sharp humor with biting, uncompromising social critique, all delivered with an undercurrent of hope that truly resonated with the audience, many of whom had just been through the horrors of the children's marches.
And his humor didn't shy away from the harsh realities he and others had just faced. He immediately joked about his jail experience, recounting that the horrible prison food tasted like home cooking by day 3.
Highlighting the dire poverty many in the community experienced.
Right. He also quipped that there were so many black people in jail, if you looked out the window and see one of them walking around free, you knew he was a tourist, using hyperbole to underscore the scale of the arrests and the systemic injustice. He even took a direct jab at Police Chief Bull Connor, joking that Hitler's head was right up above Bull Connor's shoulders and that people should just call him Bull because that's what he was. This kind of humor, delivered in such a volatile environment, was both a release and a powerful act of defiance.
His creative intervention through humor was on full display in that speech. He joked about the absurdity of perceived progress for black Americans, noting the news of the first Negro astronaut being picked before a black airline pilot.
Right, the back of the bus to the moon line.
Asking the audience, you realize that we can jump from back of the bus to the moon. It highlighted the ridiculousness of symbolic victories when fundamental rights were still denied. He also, with characteristic wit, highlighted the universality of prejudice, sharing a joke about an alien with 27 heads, 59 jaws, and they still saying, "I don't want you marrying my daughter neither."
Making a profound point about how ingrained and irrational prejudice truly is, regardless of how alien the perceived other might be.
Exactly.
He even masterfully brought his own family into his comedy, using relatable anecdotes to convey deeper truth about the Black experience and systemic inequalities. He joked about his wife burning Kool-Aid, his young son asking for a cab to run away from home, and his daughter believing there ain't no white man coming into our neighborhood after midnight. A thinly veiled, humorous reference to Santa Claus.
These jokes, while lighthearted on the surface, subtly yet powerfully underscore the realities of Black family life and the pervasive impact of systemic inequalities on everyday existence. Precisely. He used humor as a scalpel to dissect complex social issues. He meticulously critiqued the notion of a disproportionately high Negro crime rate, arguing that Black people weren't responsible for major systemic crimes like raping children, blowing up planes, or lynching. Instead, he squarely laid blame on Southern police officers, whom he called the lowest form of man walking the earth today, asserting that, given a gun, they would inflate crime rates to justify their own prejudices.
He also courageously challenged the shame often associated with being on public assistance, stating that he himself had been on relief for 20 years but was not ashamed.
Yeah, that was powerful. He powerfully argued that relief was a necessary measure because Black fathers weren't given deserving jobs and that white America should pay its dues until fair housing, jobs, and schools were genuinely provided for all. The check, he quipped, ain't much, but it's steady. A wry comment on the ongoing necessity of such aid.
He also directly tackled the insidious issue of image control and self-shame within the Black community, criticizing the lack of control over the portrayal of the Black image in media, which often led to self-shame like straightening hair to conform to white beauty standards or internalizing stereotypes about Black men carrying switchblades.
Right, the switchblade joke. I got a deal going with the white folks. I don't say nothing about their missiles, and they don't say nothing about my switchblade. A powerful and ironic commentary on societal double standards and who is truly seen as a threat.
His insights continued to be piercing. He argued that white authorities made a big mistake by enforcing segregation and putting Black people in the back, because this position, he asserted, actually allowed them to observe and learn for 300 years, to understand the inner workings of the system they were fighting.
That's a fascinating perspective.
And in a sharp, sarcastically provocative twist, he proposed a deal. If Black women could finally advertise products, appear in movies, and compete in the Miss America pageant on equal terms, he'd personally hold white women for the police.
Wow. This seemingly outrageous joke powerfully highlighted the media's racialized portrayal of desirability, the lack of representation for Black women, and the broader societal devaluation of Black womanhood. He also issued a stark prophetic warning to white people, stating that when the law designed to protect all is bent and aimed at us, he'll aim that same law at you, foreseeing how unchecked power and injustice would ultimately harm everyone.
Yeah.
He concluded that powerful speech by reaffirming his unwavering commitment, stating he would return anytime there's any problem. This speech was a microcosm of his entire activist style, blending the profound with the absurd, the challenging with the hopeful.
Dick Gregory's activism, profoundly rooted in his unique comedic sensibility, certainly wasn't limited to the civil rights movement, as crucial as that was. He expanded his efforts far beyond, showcasing a lifetime commitment to human rights in the broadest sense. In 1965, during the Watts riots in Los Angeles, a community boiling over with rage and despair, Gregory didn't just comment from afar. He flew into the epicenter, walking among the protesters and the chaos, actively trying to de-escalate the situation and urge people to calm down. And during that incredibly dangerous effort, he actually took a bullet in the knee.
Took a bullet while trying to make peace.
Think about that. A comedian known for his wit, risking his life, taking a bullet, not for a punchline, but for peace in a community tearing itself apart. That same year, he spoke at one of the first major teach-ins on the Vietnam War at UC Berkeley, expressing his nonviolent stance not as an avoidance of action, but as a deeply held philosophical refusal to put death on my payroll.
His protests against the Vietnam War escalated dramatically, demonstrating his profound willingness to engage in personal sacrifice for his beliefs. He famously began a public fast on Thanksgiving Day in 1967 to protest the war, enduring an astonishing physical transformation. In just 40 days, He lost over 180 pounds, plummeting from 280 to a skeletal 97 pounds.
97 pounds. Unbelievable.
But he didn't stop there. Starting in 1971, he embarked on an even more extreme protest, going nearly 3 years without solid food, again to protest the war.
3 years.
During that incredibly demanding period, he even ran an astonishing 900 miles from Chicago to Washington, D.C., his emaciated body a living testament to his unwavering commitment against the conflict. These were not symbolic gestures. They were profound, painful acts of self-sacrifice designed to draw attention to injustice.
He also fearlessly delved into the rough-and-tumble world of American politics, demonstrating his belief that change needed to happen at every level. He ran for mayor of Chicago in 1967 against the formidable political machine of Richard Daley, a seemingly impossible challenge.
Against Daley.
Then, in 1968, he famously ran for President of the United States as a write-in candidate against Richard Nixon. By his own passionate account, he claimed to have garnered an astonishing 1.5 million votes, though the official tally put him at 47,000, underscoring the challenges of a rightist campaign.
Still running for president.
During that audacious presidential campaign, in a move that only Dick Gregory could conceive of, he was actually arrested by U.S. Treasury agents for printing and distributing what they somewhat humorously called fake American currency. These were actual bills, but with his own picture emblazoned on them, functioning as highly provocative campaign literature.
Only Gregory. Another brilliant creative intervention, using the very symbols of power to critique the system.
Exactly.
Indeed, his hunger strikes became a signature, defining form of protest, each one a powerful statement of solidarity and defiance. Beyond the Vietnam War, in 1968, he undertook a 45-day fast in solidarity with Native Americans, drawing attention to their struggles. The following summer, in 1969, he conducted another 45-day fast, this time protesting de facto segregation in Chicago public schools, highlighting the hypocrisy of segregation existing even without formal laws. In 1970, he embarked on an even longer, grueling 81-day fast to bring critical attention to the burgeoning narcotics problem in America.
81 days.
His international efforts were equally extensive, demonstrating his commitment to human rights on a global scale. He traveled to Tehran during the Iran hostage crisis to try and free the American hostages, advised hunger-striking Irish Republican Army prisoners in Northern Ireland, and traveled to Ethiopia over 10 times for his tireless campaign against global hunger.
Domestically, his investigative work was as relentless as his protests. He fearlessly investigated serious allegations surrounding the CIA's alleged connection with drugs in the African-American community.
That was incredibly controversial.
He literally camped out in drug-ridden public parks to witness the devastation firsthand, and he rallied community leaders to shut down head shops that profited from the crisis. He even directly confronted power by protesting at CIA headquarters and was arrested there, showcasing his willingness to directly challenge institutions he believed were perpetuating harm.
And it's clear that throughout his entire life, Dick Gregory was a constant target of FBI and police surveillance, a testament to how seriously authorities viewed his activism. And because of his outspoken political engagement, his activism virtually banned him from the lucrative entertainment arena, costing him immense sums in lucrative contracts he willingly sacrificed for his convictions.
Yeah, that's a huge point.
His circle of friends and collaborators reflected his deep involvement in the most critical movements of his time. He was incredibly close with iconic figures like Martin Luther King Jr., Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Muhammad Ali.
Wow, what a group.
In 2016, after Muhammad Ali's death, Gregory even began another fast, this one specifically to honor and thank Ali, declaring, "I might go 10 years, I'm not going to eat no more food." This demonstrated his profound personal connection to the figures and causes he championed, a commitment that transcended even the basic need for sustenance. He himself eloquently articulated his overarching philosophy, stating, "I hope I'm never accused of fighting only for Negro rights, I'm fighting for human rights." This expansive philosophy extended even to his animal rights activism, where he powerfully noted, "Animals and humans suffer and die alike. Violence causes the same pain. We shouldn't be a part of it." His scope was truly universal, driven by a deep, consistent ethical core.
So what does this all mean for us today? Dick Gregory's extraordinary life truly blurred, if not erased, the lines between performer and freedom fighter. His remarkable journey challenges us to fundamentally rethink how we approach serious social issues, how we engage with injustice, and what methods can truly drive change. His commitment, often fueled by profound personal risk and deep conviction, truly makes you wonder about the power of an individual to shift the conversation, to inspire, and to confront.
This raises an incredibly important and quite nuanced question. Gregory himself, as we noted earlier, often saw his time as a stand-up comedian as distinct from real activism.
Right, he made that distinction himself.
He believed that entertainment venues were too far removed from the central sources of conflict, that they were, in his words, an escape from the action. He explicitly stated that he would go overseas and lay on some cold dirt, taking the chance of dying to guarantee a bunch of foreigners a better life than my own mama got in America, rather than simply satirizing war from the comfort of a club. For this deeply held conviction, he willingly gave up immensely lucrative contracts.
That's a fascinating and powerful distinction from his perspective. He saw his comedy as distinct from the direct action he felt compelled to take. So, how does an academic analysis, like that of Jonathan Rossing, reconcile this? Arguing that Gregory was not a comedian turned activist, but an activist who embodied humorous styles and attitudes in every facet of his performance. What's the nuance there?
It's a critical point of analysis. Rossing argues that even when Gregory definitively left the traditional show business world to fully devote himself to civil rights and humanitarian concerns, he retained the balance between seriousness and levity. The comic posture wasn't just a routine. It was, as Rossing describes, a deeply ingrained stylistic sensibility that could be transported across any context.
Okay, so the style remained, even if the venue changed.
Exactly. This means that the performance of activism itself, regardless of whether it was on a stage or in the streets, could and often did demand these comic sensibilities, this humanizing identification, this creative intervention, this unwavering hope. Rossing compellingly argues that this particular style of humor could make advocacy less confrontational and more invitational, serving as a powerful bridge to help overcome resistance to difficult racial truths.
Mm.
It allowed white Americans in particular
Hmm.
to reject customary responses of innocence or denial and instead actually commit to racial justice. It made you an ally and not an adversary, fostering understanding rather than immediate opposition.
And his enduring legacy clearly lives on, continuing to inspire. Contemporary comedic giants like Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle remember him as a king and a giant, drawing direct inspiration from his pioneering work and fearless approach to confronting societal truths.
His methods, his unique activist style, are indeed being consciously reproduced and adapted by a new generation of humorists. Think of figures like Margaret Cho, W. Kamau Bell, Ahmed, Maz Jobrani, Aaron Cater, and Dean Obeidallah, among many others. They're actively using humor to address critical, often uncomfortable issues such as racism, Islamophobia, and police brutality, carrying forward that specific, powerful tradition of integrating comedy with social commentary. So the important question for us today, I think, is, in a world still facing its own complex challenges, deeply rooted divisions, and overwhelming information, how might embracing a comic sensibility, with its humanizing humility, its capacity for creative intervention, and its unwavering, almost audacious hope, empower us to engage in more meaningful dialogue and more effective advocacy, just as Dick Gregory so brilliantly did? What stands out to you about his unique journey?
We've taken a profound deep dive today into the remarkable life of Dick Gregory, a man whose laughter didn't just entertain, it shattered barriers, and whose relentless activism quite literally changed the world. He taught us, through his life and his words, that ignorance is not bliss, it is time-consuming and costly as hell, and that by fearlessly facing what truly frightens us, we can find our true power and purpose. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, please remember to subscribe, like, and comment to support our show and help others discover these important transformative stories. Thank you for listening to VSOW.